So the fallout continues at Marvel after the departure of executive producer Victoria Alonzo. This is coming to us from the New York Post, and this article is interesting, and I thought the reaction was interesting, so I figured we'd talk about it a little bit. So the article goes on to say, Marvel Studios reeling from the exit of major executive producer Victoria Alonzo. Alonzo had been with the Marvel screen business since its inception, joining the company in 2006 in the lead up to the 2008 release of Iron Man. Now, remember, she wasn't, back in the Iron Man days, she wasn't an executive producer. She was a VFX supervisor. She got the producer credit a little bit later, and then executive producer just recently during the Marvel Phase 4. While the reasons are still unclear, the move is taking the industry by surprise. Now, this sentence really surprises me because she's been the executive producer and the chief VFX officer for the Marvel movies, basically since right around the release of Endgame. So she with the start of Phase 4, if you look at it that way, if you kind of consider how the timeline which movies got made and look at her promotion, she would have started having more creative control in Phase 4 sometime around the release of Black Widow or shortly thereafter. So when you see the sentence here, while the reasons are unclear, the move has taken the industry by surprise. Think of what the MCU has been over the last few years, with the exception of Spider-Man Endgame, which was a joint Sony production, so she didn't have as much control over that. The MCU has been hemorrhaging money. I mean, they've not made a movie that has come close to Endgame numbers. Now, granted, Avengers Endgame is what I think the second highest grossing movie of all time now, but at the same time, I mean, definitely, if you look at Shang-Chi, The Eternals, Thor: Love and Thunder, and now Ant-Man Quantumania, I mean, these have lost the studio money in consecutive order. They've been critical, some of them have been critical successes, but there haven't been a great big audience reaction to any of these things. Definitely, fan enthusiasm has declined significantly for MCU releases. Marvel movies are no longer the event that they used to be. So, and she's presided over that. She has been, one of the heads. In fact, it even says here that she was one of Kevin Feige's chief lieutenants. So she was one of the great minds behind what was going on. Here's another thing I found interesting. Alonzo is expected to remain credited as the executive producer on a raft of upcoming Marvel projects, including The Marvels, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, Secret Invasion, and Ironheart. So basically, the Marvels, we know, is done. They just keep pushing it back. So I don't know if they're doing reshoots or what they're doing with that. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which is going to come out in this May at the time of the recording. Secret Invasion, I don't know the release date on that. And then Ironheart. Now, yesterday they had mentioned Agatha, Coven of Chaos, and Echo, and I had speculated then that based on what we've heard from Bob Iger, I would be surprised if those even get made. I would think those are on the chopping block, and notice they're not even mentioned anymore. So, yeah, I think that was probably going to be the case. So those two are I think this may be the first indication that those two projects are scrapped. Alonzo's departure comes at a challenging time for the Disney-owned juggernaut, which has had a few uncharacteristic blips after more than a decade of dominating cinema culture. Well, I mean, if by a few you mean like 7, and uncharacteristic blips you mean flops, then yeah. And again, so they even acknowledge this. Why is it a surprise that she's vacated her position? What other job can you think of that you can go out and get in the real world where you can sit at your job and fail for the better part of 2 years and just keep working there? No, you mean, if this was just a regular sales position and she wasn't making her quota for 4 or 5 months, she's out on the street like any of us would be. So I don't understand why it's so hard for these Hollywood insiders to look at their own and say, well, yeah, she vacated her position. Makes sense. The Marvel movies have been making less and less money as years have gone on under her stewardship. So yeah, obviously something's not working, and the quickest way to affect change is at the top. So, but again, Hollywood media doesn't like to look at itself, and of course, we all know it would have to acknowledge that a lot of this newer message that Marvel's been pushing, this emphasis on getting the male heroes out of the spotlight and replacing with female heroes. And I know a lot of people think it's a conspiracy theory, but I mean, seriously, just look at the movies and look at the numbers. It really just isn't. I mean, it's just not. I think they kind of departed from that a little bit with Quantumania, but I think that may have been too little too late to help that movie. Plus, that movie just had too much going on in it, too big of a cast, and we don't need to go into the review of Ant-Man. Black Widow was simultaneously released on streaming, which led Scarlett Johansson to sue Disney. The legal action was later settled out of court, and I know this was a little bit of contention, but I kind of agreed with Scarlett Johansson on this. She made the movie in good faith as a producer, so basically her compensation for the movie was going to be based on the earnings, and then they say, okay, we're going to release it on streaming the same day, so that tanked that movie's earnings just about, which, affected her bottom line, which... Yeah, I understand her being upset about that. But anyway, its most recently released Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania has underwhelmed at the box office. That is putting it mildly. It's made about half its budget back. You look at that, and like I said, you look at the Eternals, you look at Wakanda Forever, you look at Shang-Chi, it's just the quality isn't there anymore. It just isn't. And I know some of that is subjective, and some people like the Eternals. There are people out there that really liked Wakanda Forever, and Shang-Chi was an okay movie. I kind of thought Shang-Chi, the first half of the movie Shang-Chi, I really enjoyed, but then it kind of got into Avatar: The Last Airbender territory, and it lost me at that point. But yeah, the quality's not there, and the box office returns are showing that. So, I mean, you could say, well, that's opinion is objective, but at the same time, we can then point to they're not making money like they used to be. People aren't going out to see them like they used to. People aren't as excited about these releases as they used to be. So when that happens, somebody's got to, pay the piper for that. And it was Victoria Alonzo. She was the one who was, again, the chief architect. And it's not even me saying this. We switch over to this article from The Wrap. I found this was interesting as I was kind of researching this a little bit today. What Victoria Alonzo's mysterious exit means for the unrest builds at Disney. So it kind of goes over the same thing. December of 2019 at Home Video Day for Captain Marvel, Victoria Alonzo, the then chief producer at Marvel Studios, bristled at the question, the innocuous query who's writing this? Who speaks like this? Not human beings. The innocuous query referred to Kevin Feige, president, as the studio as her boss. He is not my boss, Alonzo asserted before answering the question. She had a point. She technically reported to co-president Luis Desposito, not Feige. Yet it was a moment when her cool veneer cracked. If only for a moment, the Flintley executive was exposed. Now, I kind of found this interesting. The reason I found this interesting was because I was under the impression that Kevin Feige, he is the head of Marvel Studios. He is supposedly the galaxy brain that put the entire phase 1 through 3 together. The Infinity Watch oversaw that whole thing, oversaw that storyline, and was overseeing Marvel going forward. So for her to crack and say, well, yeah, he's not my boss. I don't answer to Bob or to Kevin Feige. I answer this other person. This tells me that there might be some leadership issues at Disney. If she's answering to some co-president, not Kevin Feige, other people answer to him, some people answer to this person, are we just witnessing a too many chefs in the kitchen type thing? Because when you're doing what Marvel's trying to do, which is paint a narrative, through several chapters spread across different movies and TV shows through Disney Plus, you need one consolidated mind who knows the story and is directing things. So if she's doing this and she's answering to this person who's answering to this person, doesn't answer to this person doesn't know what this person is doing, I think we're starting to see the cracks in why the MCU is starting to fail. Because, again, let's go back to the real world. I come from the world of banking. And if, now I do comic books and other stuff, but back in the day, if somebody had said, referring to my branch manager as my boss, I put my index finger in their face and said, oh no, that person's not my boss. I answer to the supervisor of the loan department. One, that's inaccurate. And two, that would not put any confidence in the person at the other side of that conversation that this bank has any type of solid management structure, because the overall manager is your boss. And you need to answer that person as much as you need to answer to your, co-president Luis Desposito. Kevin Feige is still the studio head. He is your boss. The fact that she couldn't even acknowledge that he was over her, that he had oversight over what it was that she was doing, kind of shows maybe why this was the choice that they made as who needs to depart the studio. That's just kind of me. I found this was just an interesting little nugget I found as I was researching these articles as to kind of the state of Marvel after the departure of Alonzo. Thought it was interesting. I also thought it was interesting that 2 of her projects have fallen into the ether with Agatha, Coven of Chaos, and Echo. This looks like the 2 of them probably are going to be gone. I really don't think this will be the end of the layoffs at Marvel. I think this is probably just going to be the beginning. I don't think we've got any coming up soon because my prediction is Guardians 3 is probably going to be a decent movie. I mean, it's a James Gunn thing. He knows the Guardians. I think he had a lot of control over its script. And again, this movie seems like it's going to be a bit disconnected from the rest of what's going on in Phase 5. I don't see the Kang storyline tying into it. Maybe it will. I could be wrong. But that's just my guess. But then after Guardians happens, eventually the Marvels is going to see release somehow in some way. So whether it shows up in theaters in late November or early 2024, or if they finally just punt and throw it onto Disney Plus, that movie is going to see the light of day eventually. And that's probably when we're going to see some more people, how do they say, part ways with the studio. Yeah, that's going to be a really fun day for us who enjoy reviewing things. But in the meantime, that's kind of the state of Disney right now. They definitely have a vacuum in leadership right now. It doesn't look like, it sounds based on what I'm reading here, that people don't really know who they answer to. And that's a problem. And I think this studio needs the studio needs to be taken in, and somebody, Kevin Feige or somebody, needs to take the reins, take creative control, and start getting all of these projects in line. If you're going to keep trying to do this interconnected, interwoven, one narrative cinematic universe, which has been so successful in the past, but it's going to fall. It already has fallen apart. Any chance of recovery and saving this is going to be getting it back under control, getting the central narrative back into focus, while at the same time finding a way to focus on each individual character in their movies. So that's what Marvel needs to do. It definitely, based on what we're hearing from Victoria Alonzo, that has not been the case, at least not during her tenure. So maybe that's going to change. Anyway, that's the latest from Marvel now. I'm sure we'll have a little bit more fallout, and we'll talk about it as it happens. If you're new to the channel, go ahead and please do me a favor and hit like, subscribe to the channel if you're not already a subscriber. I'd love to have you, and I will talk to you on the next video. See you then. Bye.